Hey guys, it's Chicken Jockey, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about things in the Combat Test Snapshots, which is the new combat update that Mojang has been working on for about a year now. In my opinion, these new combat snapshots are taking the PvP of Minecraft in a really good direction. But one of the nice new things that this combat update is trying to introduce is weapon variety. Before the 1.9 combat update, swords were pretty much the only viable melee weapon in the game, and bows were the only ranged weapon that existed in the game. So all combat was pretty much done with either swords, bows, or support items. After the 1.9 combat update, Mojang tried to introduce new melee weapons like Tridents, and they tried to make axes more powerful as weapons. But unfortunately, swords still pretty much outclass all other melee weapons in the current version, and they're pretty much the only thing that you're going to see used on high-level PvP. Now, axes can sometimes be useful in the current combat system, but swords just outclass axes in general because they deal more damage per second and they can get combos way more easily. However, everything changed in the combat test snapshots when Mojang introduced a new mechanic called Reach. Different weapons can now attack opponents and enemies from further range than other weapons can. This, combined with improved attack cooldown mechanics, allows Mojang to make certain weapons excel at certain things that others are less good at, which gives more variety in melee combat and makes different weapons good in different situations. That's why today I'm going to be ranking all the combat test weapons from worst to best. We're going to be talking about how the weapons differ from each other and in what situations they're useful in PvP, and how some weapons have advantages over others. Now, before we get in with the rankings, I'm going to give you guys one disclaimer. I am not exactly a PvP expert, as you can probably tell from watching my streams. But I have done a great deal of research and testing in the new combat snapshots, so I think I can say I have a good understanding of how the system works. So, with that out of the way, let's get right into the ranking of the 6th major weapons in the combat test snapshots. So I guess let's start with the 6th and worst weapon in the combat test, and that is the axe. The axe is tied with the Trident for having the slowest attack speed out of every weapon, and it also has the shortest range out of every weapon, and these are the two most important statistics when it comes to melee weapons. So you might be already guessing that the axe is not the strongest choice in melee combat. The axe gets destroyed by Tridents because Tridents can easily outrange axes and combo it with charged attacks. They also get destroyed by sword users because swords have much faster attack and can also get easy combos on axe users just by using their spam click attacks. However, axes have the unique ability to stun shields. When the opponent is shielding, you can hit them with your axe and they won't be able to use their shield for a short amount of time. However, there is a slight problem that if the shield user happens to be either using a trident or a sword, disabling their shield is not very useful if they can defeat you without the shield by using their superior weapon. Besides this, there are some better ways to counter shields without using an entire secondary weapon with slow attack speed and short reach. But we'll be talking about that later. So I guess let's move on to weapon number 5, the shield. Now the shield isn't really a weapon, it's more of a support item, but I thought I would include it in the list of major weapons because it is indeed one of the most important tools that you're going to be using in PvP despite it simply being a support item. Shields on the combat tests are pretty interesting. They kind of remind me of sword blocking from 1.8 because you can attack and shield at the same time, and they reduce a certain amount of damage intake, and they also reduce the user's momentum. However, shields are a lot stronger than 1.8 sword blocking, because they do reduce a lot more damage than sword blocking did, and they also reduce the knockback that the user takes, which makes it very hard to combo a shield user, and it makes it very annoying, because even though the shield user is getting less momentum by shielding, that reduction in momentum doesn't affect them as much if they can't get comboed easily. In fact, shield turtling is actually a decently strong strategy right now because you can sneak and shield at the same time, which virtually reduces all knockback from the shielder, and it makes it very easy to just crouch and spam block hits and hope that you can get more damage on the opponent than they can get on you. However, shields are not that useful on higher armor tiers. On levels like full diamond or full netherite, shielding is probably an effective thing to do, but as you start getting into the full protection levels, it starts getting a little bit less powerful, as it does decrease your momentum and the damage it reduces becomes a little bit less important. So you might want to switch to some other support tools such as lava buckets and cobwebs as the armor levels start getting higher. On lower gear tiers such as straight up diamond though, lava buckets are actually an extremely useful counter to shields and shield turtling. Since shields decrease your momentum, it's very easy to get stuck in lava if an opponent places it right when you're shielding. And shield turtling is basically impossible when the opponent has a lava bucket, for obvious reasons. Now that we're done discussing the shield, let's move on to weapon number 4, the sword. Swords are the ultimate dominant melee weapon in the combat test. They are the most easy to get combos with because of their fast attack speed, and their decently long range means that it's easy to escape combos from opponents, especially paired with their fast attack speed, which means that opponents with Trident still won't be able to get easy combos since you can simply outspeed their hits. Sword's attack speed is not only useful for combos though, it gives swords the highest DPS value of any melee weapon. Overall, I'd say swords fulfill the same role that they have in past versions, of being the most powerful melee weapon. They've got the best combo potential, and overall the best DPS of any melee, which are the two main factors that makes it a very solid weapon. Now that we've finished discussing swords, let's move on to weapon number 3, the Trident. At first glance, the Trident just looks like an inferior version of the sword and bow combo. Yes, it is a melee and ranged weapon at the same time, but it's not as strong as the sword in melee combat, and it's not as strong as the bow in ranged combat. I mean, sure, the Trident does have its own niche as a melee weapon, in that it has the longest range, tied with the hoe, of any melee, but just the fact that swords are better for combos and can deal more damage makes Trident seem a little bit less impressive. As a ranged weapon, Tridents are equally inferior to crossbows and bows. However, the Trident has a couple of unique enchantments that allows it to do things that no other weapons can do. The first enchantment is Impaling. Now, Impaling used to be quite useless on Java Edition, because it only worked on water-based mobs. But in Bedrock Edition and in the combat test, Impaling works on any entity that is in contact with the water, and boy is it strong. Tridents with Impaling can kill full diamond armor players in just 2 critical hits or 3 regular hits. In the water, Impaling Tridents are easily the most terrifying weapon in close range. As a projectile, Impaling Tridents actually deal even more damage to players in the water than a power 5 bow does. Now, they can't get tipped arrows and specific buffs that crossbows and bows can get, but I think it's still very important to note that Tridents can deal huge damage at a range. The second unique enchantment is Riptide. Now, I know Riptide Tridents do lose their important ability to be thrown as a projectile, but they allow players to have insane mobility that can only be replicated by Ender Pearls. And Ender Pearls are limited. Paired with the Water Bucket, Impaling and Riptide Tridents can allow players to zoom about the battlefield and take out opponents easily with their very powerful attacks. Now, I know that Tridents with Water Buckets can easily be countered by Sponges, but Sponges are overall very useless in PvP, besides just countering Trident users, so you're probably not going to see them used much in PvP minigame kits or loot drops. For that reason, I think that Impaling Tridents are going to be easily one of the most dominant weapons in the combat test, unless they're too dominant, because then in that case, Sponges are probably going to be seen more common in PvP games, and that will definitely nerf the Trident. Now that we've finished discussing tridents, let's move on to weapon number 2, the crossbow. Unenchanted crossbows are a rather weak weapon. They have a slow rate of fire and don't have much base damage to make up for it. Yes, they can hold charges unlike bows, but that's not very useful in a 1v1 battle, and even if you're trying to sneak up and jump on someone, it's still not going to help you that much against melee weapon users, because their DPS of crossbows is just too slow to compete. However, quick charge crossbows are a lot stronger. The increased rate of fire allows quick charge crossbows to have much higher DPS and makes them capable of defeating melee weapon users, providing you have good enough aim. But with the multi-shot enchantment, you're not going to need good aim. Multi-shot is very good against multiple opponents, but against one opponent, it makes it very hard to miss. With multi-shot and quick charge, you're going to be able to easily take out most melee weapon users, but crossbow's strength does not stop with just those two enchantments. Instead of just using plain arrows, crossbow users can equip firework rockets to deal much higher damage and area damage as well. This makes it near impossible to miss, as the firework rockets will explode upon contact with the ground, and with multi-shot, you're not going to miss anyone, even with terrible aim. Aside from rockets, crossbows can also equip tipped arrows, which arguably are more effective in combat than the rockets. However, you're not going to get the perk of area damage when using the tipped arrows. But poison tipped arrows, harming tipped arrows, and weakness and slowness tipped arrows are very, very effective in PvP, among many other types of effects. Overall, crossbows are capable of defeating most melee weapon users easily, even without using any special ammunition. Now that we've finished discussing the newer ranged weapon, let's discuss the strongest weapon in the game, the bow. An unenchanted bow is stronger than an unenchanted crossbow, and even though it can't hold a charge, it's definitely much more effective in straight up PvP. But Power 5 allows bows to deal insane damage, the highest damage in the game besides an impaling trident. That damage is increased even more with the Flame enchantment, which a crossbow does not have. Flame not only slows down the opponents, but also deals constant damage to them, so bows having the Flame enchantment is definitely an advantage over crossbows in many different ways. But it doesn't stop there. Bows also have access to punch, which makes it almost impossible for melee users to get to you, even if they strafe you and even if they have terrible aim, because bow spam allows you to keep spacing out the opponent by just firing as fast as possible. Bows may not have access to rocket ammunition, but they can use tipped arrows as well as crossbows. So overall, the bow is just a much stronger pick than crossbows, if you tally up all the advantages and disadvantages of both weapons. However, I think it's important to note that crossbows are definitely a stronger pick when you're fighting multiple opponents. But because of bows' overpowered enchantments, I think it's safe to say that they are a much stronger pick for 1v1s. Well, there you have it. All of the 6 major combat test weapons ranked. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, and oh yeah, I'll be putting in the description the download link for the combat test snapshots. You can only play it if you have Java Edition, but if you do, I'd highly suggest you check it out. Also, please tell me down in the comments below, what is your favorite version to play PvP on, and what is your favorite weapon or support tool to use in that version? Well, anyways, please don't forget to subscribe for more Minecraft guides and Let's Plays, and I guess I'll see you all next time. Goodbye for now.